to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I am talking menopause. I've got Melissa MacGowan from Meno Collective on my program, and we're going to be talking about how she thinks you can make menopause a superpower for women personally and in their businesses. How can we thrive through menopause? Oh my gosh, as a person who has been through perimenopause and now into menopause, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this conversation because it has just been a huge journey, a much bigger journey for me personally, and I'm sure women around the world are like, yes, let's talk menopause. Melissa is a mother of 4. She's a veteran C-suite executive. She's a leadership coach, a menopause educator and advocate. Of course, she's founded Meno Collective, and she did that after she quit her corporate career to improve her health after struggling with burnout and the early onset of menopause at the age of 44. So she realized that, oh my gosh, there is a total lack of awareness, one for us personally as women, but also in the business environment, in the corporate environment. And this is impacting not only the person suffering through this time, but also businesses and work environments at large. So she is going to be able to share with us what we can do about that and how we can continue to progress and evolve into a space that is more aware and conscious of the effects of menopause. So welcome to my program today, Melissa.
Hi, Annie. Thanks for having me. And what just dawned on me as you were talking then, given the name of this podcast, you know, and one of the key things I keep coming back to is this idea that, you know, menopause is no longer secret women's business. You know, it is in fact all of our business. And what's great is, you know, opening the conversation straight away just helps us like reduce the stigma, and just instantly women are sort of like thinking, okay, great, I can be curious, I can learn. And I like to say that menopause is coming out now, because that silence, you know, was really not good for us, like not good for our bodies, not good for our minds, not good for our businesses or our careers. So, you know, I just this morning on Instagram, of course, saw that Naomi Watts, famous Australian actress, posts on the M word and menopause and asking women how they feel when they see that word. It hit her hard, like it hits many of us. And so she's talking out. You know, Mia Friedman's just run a very peri summit. So, you know, it really is coming out, which is great. Yeah. So thanks for opening the conversation today.
Oh, you are most welcome. And I have noticed that sudden change. And I was wondering, is it just because I've been going through this phase myself? You know, when you are in a stage, you suddenly notice it's everywhere. Or is this actually just a line that we're actually just evolved into a space that prominent people are talking about menopause more? And it sounds like it's actually the latter. It just was coincidental for me. Why do you think we've waited till now to actually talk about menopause? You know, we've even got prostate awareness more, you know, like things
Yeah.
on the TV about men's health issues. You know, we need to promote and talk about all different stages of life or disease states. You know, nothing should be taboo. Why is menopause such a topic that people go, oh, don't want to talk about the M word?
Well, I guess to start with, you know, I don't think this is controversial, but I've got to be honest. I think, what's the word before health? In this case, it's women's health. So I think that gendered sexism is a big part of why this conversation hasn't been happening, why women have been suffering for too long and dealing with, you know, really bothersome symptoms, why we're still asking, you know, about HRT or menopause hormone therapy. It's still the top question in my research, you know, around that's what women have. So it all is this, you know, hangover from, you know, the lack of conversation. I think there is an element that is, I want to say misogynistic, but, you know, sexist. I think also, you know, there's a whole heap of things in the medical world. You know, they're busy, they're overloaded, maybe they don't have the training they need. There's all of that. It's a pretty fragmented, you know, system, as we know. And then I think there's been a sense sometimes that because something's natural, that, you know, we should just kind of push on and get through this. You know, like we put up with pain a lot as women. You know, that starts early for many of us in our cycles. We kind of tolerate pain. You know, we go through childbirth, and for some, you know, that's a really, really difficult experience. So we sort of, you know, we're used to tolerating pain, and then there's this overlay of, oh, well, this is natural, so, you know, maybe we can just kind of keep going. And so I think all these things have sort of been banking up, and now more than ever, women are starting to learn more, and that knowledge is truly, you know, empowering for them. You know, like I often say, you know, I've tried, and we can share my story in a minute, I've tried every product under the sun just about, you know, in this space. And I used to fly around the world for my job regularly, around the globe from Australia. And, you know, I used to come back through the airport and say to my husband, I'm surprised I haven't been pulled up, you know, with his massive amount of like supplements and menopause products and all this stuff that I was trying. And some of it helped, but not really. Like, really, I had to, you know, after a long time, figure out kind of how to become my own expert and get the support I needed. And a big part of that was developing knowledge and understanding, and that was really powerful for me. And I think women are sort of getting to that point now where they're taking a bit more ownership, and it's empowering.
It is so empowering, and yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's exactly that. It's a sense of overwhelm. It's kind of like, I've got this change happening in my body. I'm trying to respond to it, but it's supposed to be natural. But you don't know who to compare it to. If you've come from, and you know, certainly for me, it was never discussed from my mother or a grandmother, and so and it wasn't casually spoken about actually in my friend groups as well. So you're sort of overwhelmed by this situation, going, you know, for someone like me, and I've had 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. I'm a bit of a soldier in the pain capacity. I'm like,
I've only had 1 set of twins. I can't imagine you've had 2.
His body's gone through a lot, right? And I'm thinking, you know, and so I think I've got quite a high pain threshold, or I'm used to my body, you know, changing. But it was so bizarre when I'm suddenly getting these symptoms, and the fact that symptoms can be different with different women. I had no idea. I didn't know if my symptoms were normal part of life, or if they were actually abnormal. It actually took a very long time till I realized that mine were definitely abnormal, because they were compounded by endometriosis and fibroids. So you can have other things happening, but because we're women and we just soldier on, you know, you can have these complex things happening in your body, and you just go, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I love the way that you then had to become an expert of it to actually process it. It doesn't surprise me, because I know there's going to be women out there like me, and I'm quite happy to go, why didn't I learn more? I actually didn't know that I had to learn more. I thought it would just come and go, and there must be something wrong with me in the way I was approaching. So let's go back then and go, you've got perimenopause.
Let me just pick up on one point you mentioned there, though, because I think it's very validating to know that in our research projects that we've done, it is overwhelming for most women, and that lack of conversation, they're generally turning to their girlfriends or trying to form their own communities around this, but that's not necessarily translating to what they need either. So what you just said is a shared experience of many women right now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I do feel better. And not only what is it, and are my symptoms normal? I'll actually stay there. I actually went to a GP for something else once, and she sort of said instantly, oh, well, I can take all of that away, you know, because I was going, oh, how bad is this perimenopause? And she just had a fly off comment of, well, I can take that all away if you just go on HRT. And I had this whole concept, because I had a grandmother with breast cancer. I thought, oh, I've heard I shouldn't do that. And then, how can you just suddenly take it away? Because it just sounded too good to be true. And is that right? It was actually so overwhelming and so surprising. I sort of just couldn't process it. So I'm actually, now that you've said that, maybe I'm not unusual at all. I'm sure the lived experience is a very confused generation of women in that way. So when it hit you at 44, how did you experience it, and what brought it to the extent that you went, oh my gosh, I've actually got to quit my job. I can't even operate in this anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of why it's great to have this conversation, why I do what I do now, is because I did get to that point, and I'll explain that, but I got to the point where, you know, I was out walking with my husband one day, beautiful part of the world where we live in the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. You know, we were by the beach, and I just stopped and broke down and said to him, you know, I just can't keep doing this, I don't think. You know, like high normalized stress levels, corporate exec career, travel, 4 kids, and a whole range of menopause symptoms, which the physiology of burnout, right, is very similar in many ways.
Mm.
So I said to him, all I can see here is that I either quit my job, and I was the breadwinner of our family. He was running the house and managing all the various logistics with our kids. I said, I either quit the job with no backup plan when I'm sort of at the peak of my corporate career, or I can keep going and push on, because like you, I've done that, like I've had 4 kids. I'm the strong one. I'm the capable one. I'm the leader. Yeah, I'm the eldest child, all of that stuff. So I can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then risk further decline to my health and well-being, which was already impacting me clearly, but my family and my work, and our relationship and all of that stuff. So it was like this awful binary choice. Like I couldn't see a third option. Quit without a backup plan, leaving a financial, situation that, I don't have a plan for, or keep going and just know that I'm going to burn myself right out, really. So I quit my job, and it was a really tough decision. And that's what I want. I don't want other women to have that binary, choice, right? There's got to be other options. So look, because I was young or younger, there was a very long sort of time to figure out what was going on in my body and in my mind, to be honest. That's slowly changing. However, I speak to women every week who are also experiencing, what would be considered an earlier menopause. I feel like it might be on the rise. So I had a whole set of seemingly unconnected things going on, things like, certainly exhaustion, sleep disturbance. I was getting chronic sinus infections, like some of the less common symptoms that we don't hear about. I had a lot of hair loss. I had like acne and pimples all the time. I started experiencing anxiety for the first time ever. I fainted a couple of times, and I'm like 6'1". I'm sort of this, always been a tall, healthy person. And then I was in New York for work, and I literally hit the deck.
Wow.
In the H&M store. And it's sort of like all these things going on. So a whole range of things. I was told it was my thyroid, it was my gut, it was low iron. Now, at this stage, my periods were still regular enough. So that wasn't, this is the point to the uniqueness. That wasn't kind of an early sign for me. Similarly, hot flushes often happen for women, earlier. And whilst I don't agree with diagnosis, because this isn't an illness, they are those flags that indicate there's something going on, right? These are the effects of, perimenopause, and I'll explain what that is in a second. So it was actually like a whole range of things. My mood, sometimes a bit angry, like, do I want to just kind of, stab my children? That sounds terrible, but more sadness. I'd get to the end of the week and I'd be so exhausted from being the leader and running the teams and doing all that stuff in a male-dominated environment that, I'd just be so tired on the weekend and so, low, and I'd have to just kind of recover while my husband took the kids out. Yeah. Not to mention the other physiological, there was no sex going on, right? Like, say, dry vagina, all of this sort of stuff. So it was all very disconnected, and it was really the hot flushes that kind of got me back to the doctor again. So I was on to the 8th doctor by this time. I'd seen endocrinologists, all the works, as well, to try a lot of complementary things. But it was finally the flushes that I think she was like, I'm going to do some more tests. And then she said, I'm sorry to tell you, you're in menopause. And it was a real shock to me. And then it went through this whole process of like processing it. Like, what does that mean to me? And what's my perception about what that means, and my identity and all of that. So that took a while to kind of essentially wrap my head around the fact that this is a hormonal change. This is about changes in your hormones. It's not about age, you know. So like, just to sort of clarify for, the people listening, I mean, when we talk about these stages of menopause, and the term, perimenopause is quite a new term, really, for most of us, and even for the doctors. So whilst 100%, like all women are going to go through experience menopause, and that is like a transition, it's a life stage, it's about hormones, it's that shift from your reproductive years to your sort of post-reproductive years. The phases are sort of perimenopause, which is in the lead up to menopause. And the interesting thing, and I didn't know this until, you know, I had my experience, but menopause is only just that day, right? It's one day.
Yeah.
It's one day when you haven't had a period for 12 months. And then you're in, you know, post-menopause for the rest of your life, right? So, you know, I'm in my 40s and I'm a post-menopausal woman, and I've still got a lot to do out there, right? So it took a while for me to get my head around that. But perimenopause is generally that lead-up phase, which typically happens to women in their 40s, is the most symptomatic. It's the most troublesome. Average is around 4 years, but can be, you know, up to 10.
I heard it can go up to 10, which is like,
yeah,
wow, amazing. That is so harsh.
It is, because you know, you might still be experiencing your periods, and you know, you just might not be sure something's just, I'm not feeling quite right. Like I'm not quite myself, is what a lot of women say to me. Or I just feel like I've lost my spark a bit. But, you know, is it COVID? Is it like remote working? Is it the children being at home? Is it the blah, 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 you know, midlife, which can be anything, you know, let's face it, it's like 35 to 65 these days. Like what an inherently stressful time anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's always a lot going on. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of responsibility in our work, in our families, all of that, relationships. And then on top of that, you've got the effects of these changing hormones. And so stress, you know, of course, is a natural thing in our work and our life. And that tends to make things more challenging, whilst at the same time, you know, it's not all menopause's fault.
Exactly. It's really complicated, isn't it? Like in some ways, once you understand it, it's not, because you then understand what is happening in the change. But also, how do you separate all those other things that could be happening? You could just be burnt out because you haven't had a break, or you've been through a pandemic and you're now homeschooling kids and trying to still, you know, put out the workload. It could be relationship tensions and pressures. You know, it's so hard to sort of pinpoint, well, what is menopause or premenopause symptoms, and then what is actually something else. So in a way, it doesn't surprise me that you then had to go to 10 doctors, because they're instantly thinking, if you look at your age and if you can't define something specific, then it's probably got to be another health issue.
That's
so
right.
go through this, which is a roller coaster, isn't it? Because that's exhausting.
Well, it is, because women in my community also hear, you know, some misdiagnoses, which are very frightening for them, you know, sometimes around what it could be, you know, cancer, all sorts of things, from sort of that down one extreme to it's just PMT, you're fine, off you go, you know, down the other end of the sort of spectrum. So I guess, you know, symptoms call for us to be a bit more connected to what's going on in our bodies. And, you know, many of us women are already, especially the high achieving women, which I think are probably a big part of your audience, like we're already got a lot going on, and we're probably, I'll speak for myself, a little bit, you know, we might be exercising and doing the things, but we're not necessarily connected with what's going on in our actual body.
Yeah.
You know, like we're really cerebral, and, you know, we're really great at taking action and all of that. But to actually slow down and get in touch with what's going on in our body. Like I remember being at the beach again a few years after, you know, finding out that it was menopause. And I said, you know, I was talking again to my husband, and he said, you know what, I think slowing down is the hardest thing that you'll ever do, you know, and he was absolutely right. And now I'm realizing again, I'm not alone, because so many women are terrified of that stillness, right? Just letting things settle and then getting a sense of what's going on. So at a really practical level, for the women listening who might be sort of like you alluded to, thinking, is this just kind of life? Is it stress? Is it burnout symptoms? What is it? Is it perimenopause? You know, at the end of the day, the best data is yourself, right? The best experiment is yourself. And I don't like hearing when women are going down paths, and I've been there, of expensive testing and all sorts of, you know, blood testing and Dutch testing and all this different stuff of hormones and balance your hormones, whatever. Sometimes actually there's a role just to really track a bit yourself first and understand what's going on in your body, and then getting the support for that, right? So the very common symptoms, because it's a very unique experience, obviously, but there are some common, really common symptoms. And I mentioned some before, you know, hot flushes is like 70% of women. Sleep disturbance is a really big and challenging one that also impacts a lot of women, which is connected to night sweats. It's one of the reasons why we wake up, but there's also just sleep disturbance, insomnia, psychological symptoms, mood swings, anxiety, memory loss, because our brain is also impacted by the change in hormones. But there, like I said, there are many other symptoms. So understanding that the symptoms actually they originate in our brain, and hence where stress comes in, because if we're producing cortisol, you know, we can't be like producing estrogen as well. So there's a woman called Dr. Melissa MacGowan, and she's a neurologist, and she looks into this area, and she says, you know, it's stress that's stealing our sex hormones as women. You know, like we think about all the bits under the bikini. She said, actually, there's so much about the brain that is connected to what goes on during menopause. So it's stuff that I didn't know and understand back then, that I'm now trying to make simple for women to just be able to, busy women, to be able to just access enough information to make some little changes without changing everything, to, you know, to feel like they've got more energy, they've got a plan for them around what to do around their symptoms. They're a bit more empowered. And you know, and like I said, they're not going to try and change everything overnight, because that's just overwhelming. Yeah.
I love the way you've explained that, because I definitely connect to that. And I know other women, you know, in that, when you're a corporate or if you're in that busy space, it's almost like I don't have time to deal with it. Whatever these, you know, you've been awake, you've been sweating, you've got flushes, you're not feeling great, you're a bit foggy, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is actually, you can be on a roller coaster so much, you go, this is actually extremely inconvenient. I really don't have time for this. And so that period can just actually go on for quite some time. I found that when I actually then switched on, go, okay, this is definitely not right. And then I actually did. I started a diary, and I'd write down how often the sweats happen, you know, how many, you know, times I wake up at night, this or that. So when I went to the doctor, I actually went, yeah, this is actually what's happening to me. Is this normal? And she's like going, yeah, absolutely, it's normal. But then for me, she also did some, you know, ultrasound and checked out and found that there were other complex things happening as well. But it actually did make me actually stop and pause and go, all right, I'm actually going to start having to focus internally more and actually measure, you know, what hasn't happened before. And even if it is all natural and everything, well, I've got to then, you know, that's my reality. I need to be understanding what's happening and how it's affecting me, right? Now, tell us a little bit about your perspective on then HRT or going natural. What is your, you know, when a doctor then suddenly says, oh, you can take that away, or you can actually, other people go, no way, don't go natural. And you're saying you had every potion known to man on the plane, you know, you could have got drug tested. What's the deal there? How do you approach it?
Yeah, I will. Just one thing that you were saying just a minute ago first is, you know, we are often too busy, aren't we? But then what we don't think about is that cost. Like, it actually ends up being so expensive and more time consuming when we wait till a crisis on this. So I love that you actually started tracking what was going on for you, because that really is, like, that's a step towards you becoming your own expert, you know, because you understood what was going on with you. HRT, I actually just posted something on LinkedIn today. It's like, wow, here I am talking about HRT on LinkedIn. So it is still the thing that most women want to know about. And we're having a big pendulum swing from the study back in 2001 that has now been proven to not be accurate. That has put all the fear in all of us. And it's had, you know, people like in my mum's generation kind of just drop the HRT overnight and then realise, oh shit, that's actually not, you know, working out so well for me. And now we've got sort of, say, like the UK, who are, you know, really taking a slightly more medicalised approach to menopause. And we've got some big names out there like Davina McCall and others doing a really good job of busting some of the myths. around, you know, we've got to go through this naturally. You know, that's what a strong woman does, or trying to get under some of the other myths around breast cancer. Now, it's not to suggest that there aren't risks with HRT. It's just that some of them have been blown out of proportion over the years. Yeah. For most women, you know, there are certainly women who might be having an experience around cancer or treatment, and they're going to have to get, you know, a more detailed opinion on this. But where I personally stand on this is I'm all about empowerment. So how can I help women get enough information as easily as possible so that when they go to their doctor, they're equipped to ask the questions for them. So in our research project, we had women being told by their doctors, I'm not going to talk about HRT. You know, you're my, one woman was told, you know, you're my, you know, my mama that had the natural birth, like, you know, so we're going, and then at the other end, you know, sort of, I mentioned perimenopause and here you go, here's a script for HRT, you know, because it's not a silver bullet. Yeah, it doesn't, you know, to the point before, it doesn't solve everything, right? Because like we said, there's still midlife and stress, and not HRT doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't, you know, solve every symptom, but it does help a lot of symptoms, as does something like exercise and some of the lifestyle choices, right? So I'm all up for women having options. I certainly don't want women to feel like shamed or guilty or anything about accessing HRT. I want to reduce the time between that being a question and then them getting the right support. So in our program, you know, that's kind of the first thing women get actually when they sign up before we even get started is an empowerment class with the doctor on our team to bust some of those key myths and equip them right from the start to just start thinking, okay, is that something I want to explore? And if I do, I've seen now what a good doctor looks like. I can now go to my, you know, GP and be quite specific about my questions, and I can have agency around that. And, you know, even yesterday I was talking with a woman who's doing something in the menopause space, really savvy businesswoman. And she said, you know, I hope she's not listening to this, but she said to me, you know, if women are prepared to do the work, then, you know, they're not going to need HRT. And I had to pull her up and say, I was thinking, first of all, obviously she hasn't been through menopause, but doing the work, that just contributes to this idea of let's put more back onto the women, you know, like you should be able to cope, right? And here we are at a stage of our life where we're trying to really come into, you know, this next sort of chapter for us with a sense of increased power and a bit of fierceness. So we want to shirk off some of those shoulds, you know, and the last thing we want is people feeling bad for you know, accessing HRT or colluding in this idea of more pressure and push on, you know, just be the strong one and push on.
Be the soldier, because it's also, there's other effects of that. So you can be the soldier, but then you have other things will happen. You can then trigger anxiety. You can then have depression. You can have a relationship breakdown. You know, if you're going, oh, thank goodness I haven't done HRT, but you've got other things that are actually more impactful to more people, you know, it's not as easy as that. So I love what you're saying. It's actually about the choices. And so I agree. I would have appreciated that rather than saying we could fix it in a second. It's kind of like, oh, that was just too much information just because
totally
one flush. and then thinking, oh, okay, then someone else, you know, you phone a friend and they go, oh no, don't take that because you know, if you've got a relative who's had breast cancer, you could get breast cancer.
See, like, this is the thing. So we're getting information
and then
from
suddenly when one was overwhelming, the first person called a friend was like, whoa, that's not an option then now. And then I'm like, well, I should be more of a soldier. And so this is where you actually want to go. What a great place that you've created, that you can have a safe place to go, you know, this is actually the information about it. Become knowledgeable, become aware of the symptoms and aware what's normal and what are options for everyone just to be considered. I love that empowerment, so that when you go, you can go, oh yeah, thanks for that. Well, what are the rates? And, you know, what are my risks and what are the choices that will help me, you know, the information that will help my decision at this time, right?
Because, you know, like a 15-minute appointment, which is often what's happening. Like there's only so much that you're going to get through. So we want to make sure, and likewise, if someone's not getting the support they need from a medical partner, then, move on. You've got to go elsewhere, because I mean, there's all sorts of research still coming out. There's some great stuff coming around from around the globe, but some of the recent research is showing, different ones are showing anywhere between 70 to 90% of menopausal women who are working find that it's negatively impacting their work. Right now, 1 in 10 women are leaving their job, at least, based on that. So then we start to make the connection between, ourself and our health, how we're feeling about ourselves, then the impact on our work, our families, and that kind of leads me back to this whole idea of like, it is all of our business, really. Yeah.
So when you're working with Meno Collective and you've created this business and people can come to you to get support, but you're also doing that in work environments, so how are you helping HR companies approach this big M word and then say, this is what you need to know about menopause, maybe up to 50% of your staff could be, a female. Of what percentage of that age has it actually been addressed? How do you discuss that? How do you incorporate that into a company, for example?
Yeah, so we try and help them see, of course, the business case around this and why it is compelling.
Yeah.
And actually why now's a good time, because there aren't many organisations in Australia, for example, that are actually being proactive in this space, and women, are leaving their jobs at the top of their game, right? So we know it's not only just expensive to replace that woman, it's actually, there's a whole range of other things that go on that add to that cost. So the business case and there's some pretty concrete data that is quite compelling for businesses to realise, okay, this is impacting at work, productivity, extended sick leave, people leaving. I've invested all this time to bring, have this great diverse female talent. And now, that they, at a time where we need them in leadership, we're already underrepresented, right? So there's all of, there's all of that going on. Then there's just the fact that, there's been 3 times as many menopause-related discrimination claims in the UK tribunals in the last year than there ever has been before. So gender, age-related discrimination around menopause, where perhaps a woman is experiencing symptoms and then her workplace aren't taking that seriously. She's been performance managed or pushed out of her job.
Yeah.
So this idea of how they can be supportive and compliant, that's really, and we call that being a menopause-friendly organisation. And it just starts with growing awareness and having the conversation. I've got some organisations that are, seeing this as a nice ad for them around what they're already doing in inclusion and wellbeing. Really, it's around mental health often for women as well. But I'll be honest with you, it's not something that, is on the top of people's, business agenda. I think that it'll evolve as it has with like parental leave and all that sort of stuff over the years, where, to be a great employer for women, I really believe, menstrual leave and understanding menopause, that's where we're heading. We're just kind of we're early days here in Australia. The UK are more advanced.
And we need those pioneers in our own country to make that happen, and to actually just put it on the table as an issue to address, and definitely to get in that through HR and to get that on. We know most of the corporates have annual health check days, and what's included on that. I know I've just been working in eye health for the last few years, and so we've been, well, that's interesting. They get told to go to the dentist, but they don't get told to get their eyes tested. That it'd be another thing to add to that list.
Yeah.
To actually go, okay, well, how often do you actually ask your female staff, if they've got any symptoms in this way, and is it affecting them? Because then once you've gone through that, you notice, and I actually reflected back a number of years ago when I worked in one office, a couple of the ladies were going through perimenopause, obviously, and they were just like turning the temperature, or to cold, and then other people going hot. Well, it became a really big office issue, and we went, actually, now that I think about it, really, really unproductive. It would have been better relocating even to an area that the two of them were able to control their temperatures, rather than, the whole office going nuts and putting Band-Aids and stickers over the thermostats, because it's really embarrassing. It's like you're a problem for something that's natural, and it is having a significant impact.
You make a great point, because the managers often, they're the ones in companies that need to sort of understand this, because like a hallmark, for example, of a menopause-friendly environment is someone sees you grabbing the air conditioning remote control or whatever, and they're thinking, I'm not hot at all. But they're like, oh, that's probably what's going on. Yeah. I don't need to say anything. I don't need to make a joke about that at her expense. We're beyond the point where she needs to explain, because it's great if you can do a fact-based, hey, I'm having a menopausal hot flush, like that's certainly a step in that direction. But then when we really get there and we're embedded in the culture, because we've trained our managers, who, by the way, have got, wives and friends and sisters and whatever, then it doesn't even need to be discussed, because there's just a general understanding that, temperature control.
Exactly.
Fine. Yeah.
It'd be something like a man has, starts getting enlarged prostate, and suddenly you notice they go out to the loo regularly. No one goes and says, hey, what's the situation there? You just go, you go to the loo every hour for an obvious reason. Right. But, things can happen in there. I think once we actually get more comfortable, they go, yeah, that's right. This is normal. Or people have different situations. So you get to a stage that you don't have to, make someone feel uncomfortable. You just want to make the environment as comfortable as possible, so that you can, you don't have to quit your job. You can be productive.
Well, and we're all learning on this, you know what I mean? Like it's new territory. So I think just to have some grounding in that, so you've just got the facts, can be really empowering for men as well, and I'm finding they're very interested. So I think that's the opportunity in the workplace. It really is a workplace opportunity, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly a workplace opportunity, and it aligns perfectly with our gender equality issues of women actually just having those opportunities to progress to senior roles in all organisations, and also not be robbing those organisations when you're actually making some gains there, and then you're losing the incredible women who've added such value to your organisations and to the bottom line, because of this reason. It's so unnecessary with awareness and education. I thank you so much for sharing all of this with my listeners today. It's been such a great opportunity to have this conversation. I must admit, I haven't had an openly frank chat about menopause in this way. So great, and I love that. I love the versatility and the diverse conversations actually that I have on this show. Nothing's taboo, right? It's all should actually, we're just doing life here, and when you see someone out and they're in their power suit and they're doing the right thing, you've got no idea what's happening underneath that. You don't know if they're sweating like anything, or if they're just so tired, or they're just feeling fuzzy and they're not on their game. And it's really easy for us to make judgments, right, on, oh my gosh, what happened to her? She used to be really great, to actually being as supportive as we can be, and aware of, I think
that just takes the pressure off women straight away, like even just that understanding.
Just go, oh my gosh, that's right. And to a stage where you're then comfortable, probably I'm very comfortable chatting about anything, but I'll be quite happy to go, oh my gosh, is this menopause? But then most, and I'm quite happy to go, most people aren't that person. Other people go, I don't have to even share my information.
No, exactly.
That is not required. No. And I totally agree. So you'll get the people like me who are up front and just go, yep, that's what it is, another flush. But then that's not required. That's where
and it was really vulnerable for me to, like, I can't believe here I am doing this. But I've had years, right, to sort of process this and to really, partner in this area with lots of different people. And I just think, what do I wish I knew? And how can I, support women in workplaces? So it's kind of my mission now, but which is kind of also the point, back to the superpower. It's hard when you're exhausted and you're right in the thick of it, but actually it's a tunnel, not a cave. So there are new possibilities that emerge from this stage of life, where our brain actually changes to care just a little bit less about everyone else and a little bit more about ourselves.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, everyone, if you're wanting to get in touch with Melissa MacGowan, you can email Melissa at menocollective.com. And I'm assuming also go to menocollective.com to find out information about her. What are they going to receive when they come to your website or email?
Well, do you know what I might call out, because we've mentioned hot flushes a few times, and they were a bugbear for me as well when I was at work. So I've put what worked for me and for the other women in my community into a toolkit. It's a hot flush relief toolkit, and anyone who's sort of in that, I'd love them to, use that if they want to, because that's going to help them. So that's www.freemenoguide.com.
Fantastic. Jump on, grab your free guide, just start becoming more aware, ladies. Don't leave it so long like I did. I'm quite happy to go. I'm the poster lady for, seriously, you were a soldier way too long. Not necessary. Just lean in and go, even if it's not menopause, just want to go and discuss it and go, okay, could it be, could it not? It's all about, awareness and actually pausing to just explore what is happening with your body. You want to be at your optimum health. You want to be at your, just that optimum sense of well-being, right? So that you can enjoy life. You don't want to be slogging it out all week and then being a total mess on the weekend. You don't even get to enjoy your weekend, and everyone thinks you're feral or not, or just exhausted, right? It's not a kind way to treat yourself. And once we actually do start talking on this level and you start becoming aware of that, you go, you've got to really nurture yourself. It's the ultimate of self-love, to be able to fill yourself up fully, and then so that you can ride this journey, and there are that's right, silver bullets. It will be different for everybody. Definitely don't just phone one friend like I did. Definitely go to the experts like Melissa and be able to find out the actual facts. And I want you to do that. I want you to explore your situation personally, the facts about menopause, on what's actually happening in the world with literature. Be informed from the right people with the right expertise. So thank you so much for coming on my program today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great. And thanks for sharing your personal insights as well, because I think that, really adds to the conversation.
Thank you so much.